Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Someday with Jay Barsky. This episode's guest is fellow South Florida comic and local artist, Jesse Cohen. Jesse is also a close friend of mine that I was able to reunite with him after a recent accident that he experienced. You'll hear us talk about him being able to turn his pain into comedy, our shared interest in Vincent van Gogh, and much more. So with that being said, I hope you enjoy our Someday with Jesse Cohen. Jesse Cohen, what's up? How you doing?
Great, Barsky. Good morning. Happy Monday. Nice to see you. Thanks for
Yes,
having me here.
I'm excited that you're here. Before I get into it, I don't know if you're comfortable asking about this or talking about this, but I'm happy that you're recovering or you look good from.
It's good to be alive.
Yeah, I haven't actually seen you since. I don't think I've seen you since your accident. If you're okay with
Then
talking about.
yeah, that means that the last time you saw me would have been when you came to the art show back in July, I think.
Yeah.
Unless we saw each other like at an open mic in August. I was gone for most of August, so
Mm-hmm.
it's unlikely, but yeah, that would have been the last time we saw each other was my July 27th art show. And then I got hit by a car as a pedestrian crossing the street in a crosswalk in broad daylight on September 11th,
Mm-hmm. Wow.
2024. I got hit by a Jeep Liberty. So,
And you were like sent to the hospital
oh
immediately,
yeah,
or?
yeah. I broke my leg. I broke my left leg. Broke my right arm on my humerus, basically my shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the hospital, I think, 3 nights. And then when I left, I went to Massachusetts and I went and stayed at my parents' home for a couple months, did physical therapy, saw the doctors up there,
Uh-huh.
and just sat on a couch for like 6 weeks. I couldn't get off the couch. And then eventually, I started walking again, and my parents were like, get the fuck out, go back to Florida. So I came back to Florida in November. And yeah, life's been good though, man. I got hit by a car. It absolutely could have killed me.
Yeah.
I did hit my head on the ground. I was bleeding from my temple over here.
Uh-huh.
I had a big bump on my head. And I think the only thing that saved me is I put my arm up around my head like this when I was in the air. And I don't
Oh.
think I mean, I'm using my left arm. It's
Yeah,
my
yeah.
right arm. I can't really do that anymore.
Yeah.
But it wasn't conscious.
Mm-hmm.
It's just what happened. And then when I came down, I smashed my arm, but I think I saved my head by using my arm as a
Oh,
helmet.
wow.
Yeah, it hurt. It hurt.
So during those 6 weeks when you were up in Massachusetts, was there any like kind of reflection on everything? Like your
Yeah,
life? Like, I mean, I'm sure this is a life-changing moment. Like, did your perspective change on a lot of stuff?
absolutely. My perspective changed on a lot of things for the better. I don't even know where to begin. I'll tell you, from the moment that I got hit by the car, like in that moment, one of the first things I thought is if I make it through this, I'm getting comedy out of it. Like there's jokes here. I don't know what they are yet, but this is comedy gold. I just got hit by a car in a crosswalk. It immediately made clear to me how reliant I am on other people. My
Mm-hmm.
friends, my family, people who immediately came to my rescue, whether it was that day in the hospital, friends who came to visit me in the hospital while I was there. While I was up in Massachusetts, I had people visit me there as well, and that was nice. And I didn't want to make a public spectacle about it. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's a little embarrassing to get hit by a car, dude.
Yeah.
But there was a rumor for a day or two that I was dead.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
hear that.
Well, good, good. But like the rumor had gotten back to me in two different directions that I had been killed in a car
Oh,
accident.
wow.
And that's when I decided to put something on social media that I was alive, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily well, but alive. And that ruined my art market.
Mm.
The rumor that I was dead probably made all my paintings just skyrocket in price for a day or two. Of
Okay.
course, people paid $20 instead of 10 now. But, just how reliant and dependent I am on other people was one of the first things. And it's kind of, I've not had a lot of experience in my life with medical problems and with physical trauma and injuries. So
Mhm.
This was kind of my first rodeo as far as going to the hospital
Okay.
as a patient.
Mhm.
And just understanding that, like, this is a really bad situation for me to be in, but there's so many people who have it so much worse,
Yeah.
either because their medical situation is worse or their resources just aren't there, or some
Yeah.
combination of both.
Mhm.
And so I just felt like that miracle that, I was able to be taken care of, and, that worked out as well as it could, at least. And, for my parents to be able to take care of me, because frankly, what I had to go through for like 6 weeks of having to, like, piss in a bottle, struggle to get to and from the toilet,
Wow.
not being able to bathe, not being able to feed myself, not being able to do anything.
Mhm.
I have friends, I got a girlfriend around here, like, life is good,
Mhm.
but that was way too much to be able to ask anybody to be able to
Yeah.
do. And it was kind of a full-time job for my folks who were
Mhm.
retired to be able to take care of me. And so I appreciate that. And it's just the idea that, like, how dependent you are in the first place. And then when you're really, laid out, like,
Yeah.
how it's like, this is a matter of survival. If people don't take care of you, everybody else in the tribe will keep walking, and you get left behind in the woods to die on your own. It's tough. It's tough. And during that time also, when I was, bedridden, so to speak, the campaign was going on, watching that on TV, watching a lot of stand-up comedy, watching a lot of Kill Tony and Tony Hinchcliffe
Mhm.
at Madison Square Garden, and then seeing his performance at Madison Square Garden at the Trump rally, just thinking about, like, comedy and the influence of comedy on
Mhm.
politics now is crazy.
Yeah.
It is absolutely crazy. And
Mhm.
I thought a lot about that, and I also just, thought a lot about just, like, the miracle of being alive. I was happy
Yeah.
to be alive.
So it's good that you got material out of it.
Yeah.
Like, how much, as for like time length, did it come out to?
I I did a spot recently. I did a headlining spot at a library at Lilo's,
Mhm.
and so, I had 25 minutes or more to fill. I spent about maybe 3 or 4 minutes talking about my accident.
Well, I always admire like people that can make material out of something hard that they struggled with instead of like a lot of people just talking about like general stuff that's not relatable. I mean, I've talked about like hard stuff. I mean, I can there's a lot of hard stuff that I've gone through, but I it's hard to like kind of compile that to something funny in just like a minute or two or more. So I always admire people that can like summarize their struggle in a funny manner.
One of the running themes in my comedy is that I may be pretty well educated, and people may think I'm smart, but I am stupid. I
Mhm.
am really stupid.
Yeah.
And I think getting hit by a car in a crosswalk is pretty solid evidence that you're stupid. I may have been hit by someone who's even more stupid, but, like, so it goes,
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's solid evidence of my stupidity. And I got plenty more on that, but I think that just getting hit by a car, I can just leave it at that. I don't have to prove beyond that that I'm even
Yeah.
more stupid than I am.
I always say like I went to grad school and I think I went that far in my life just for me being nice. I wasn't too smart. Like I think I was just got like especially when I got to grad like undergrad was easy, but it was when I got to grad school that's when it was like a little kind of really hard for me. And I was taking like twice the workload. And I was just like in grad school I had to have a 3.0 average to pass, which
Yeah,
is a hard like depending on what you're studying and stuff.
in the curve.
Yeah, and I just made it, but it was pretty much like a lot of my couple of my professors, like, gave me, like, a curve up, and it was because I was pretty nice to them.
Well, charm goes a long way.
Yeah, it's
What
because
did what did you study in grad school?
public health.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
mean, that's a real thing.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, but like, a lot of it I had to say was just because I rely on me being charming to a lot of professors.
I wasn't able to charm my way through law school. I had grades that reflected that I was not a charming person. Yeah.
Well, speaking of law school, what kind of led you to that career?
I think it was sort of an inevitable fate or conclusion for lack of imagination, frankly. I had ideas about what I wanted to do before going to college and before going to law school they're not necessarily in hindsight bad ideas or far-fetched, but they seemed far-fetched and heading in the wrong direction at the time, at least. Like stuff like, oh, I'm going to move to Alaska and be a truck driver. Or I will be a bicycle messenger in New York City. And my dad's just like, yeah, do whatever you want as long as your grades were good.
Hmm.
I'm just like, all right. I went to law school because everybody else in my family kind of did the same thing. Both of
Hmm.
my parents are attorneys. Two of my uncles are attorneys. I was a political science student in college after changing my major from like philosophy.
Mm.
I'd been involved in debate team like from the 7th grade through college.
Oh wow.
It just seemed like a natural thing to do. And again, I just lack of imagination.
Hmm.
But to make matters worse, after I graduated from college at University of Texas, I worked for a company called Princeton Review,
Hmm.
which is a test prep company that help people study for like the SAT in the exams to go to law school or medical school or, business school, whatever. And I was working there for years and just surrounded by all these ambitious people who
Hmm.
were like trying to get into law school, trying to get into medical school. And I knew an awful lot about how to do that.
Yeah.
And people were like, well, when are you going to law school? When are you going to law school? And I was just like, so eventually I just felt the pressure, sent off my applications,
Hmm.
and then got into law school. So I went because
Yeah.
what else are you supposed to do? And then I got out. Now I'm like, what am I supposed to do? And people are like, be a lawyer.
Yeah.
Like, goodness gracious, what have I got myself into?
Was there a specific lawyer specialty that you kind of wanted?
Yeah. Yeah. I chose University of Miami
Hmm.
because I wanted to do maritime law, which
Hmm.
is, you know, ships, sailors, longshoremen,
Hmm.
anything having to do with like ocean cargo,
Hmm.
transportation, cruise ships, all that stuff. I wanted to study that, and every law school in the country that I spoke with when I'd go to a law school fair, like if that's what you're interested, University of Miami, that's the place to go. So
Hmm.
I didn't look at the price tags. I didn't look at any of the credentials or anything else. All I was just like, University of Miami,
Hmm.
sent off my application, got in, and yeah, I took all of the law of the sea classes, maritime, admiralty law, stuff about marine pollution. I've not used a lot of it since graduating.
Oh,
I've
okay.
used a little bit of it from time to time, but not a lot.
Hmm.
So certainly not a maritime lawyer.
But if you didn't do law school, was there another career that you kind of would have set yourself to lead yourself to go into?
Oh, you know, if I could go back and do it all again, I think I'm crazy enough to think I'd be a decent therapist.
Okay, I
You
can see that.
know,
Yeah.
I've had a lot of people over the years tell me I should be a rabbi, but I'm just not that religious. It's like, I don't know what I'd be leading people to. It wouldn't be God. It's something in the lines of like, psychology or therapy,
Hmm.
possibly. In hindsight, I mean, all of us in my generation should be working for computer companies and be billionaires by now. I had no interest in computers, still kind of
Hmm.
don't, that
Hmm.
kind of thing.
You're not just a lawyer, you have other artistic qualities about you. But I'm really curious is what came first? Was it your interest in painting or was it stand-up comedy?
The art. The
Uh-huh.
art is that goes back forever with me. I've always been interested in stand-up comedy as a fan.
Mhm.
I would watch a lot of stand-up comedy going back to at least elementary school, at least. Like, not earlier than that, but I remember watching stand-up on television Saturday nights in elementary school. It took a very long time to think, well, I could do that,
Mhm.
like 40 years. But art, I grew up around my household. My parents bought art, decorated the house with original art. We had that in our lives. We went to art museums. When we were on vacation, they would spend time going to art galleries. And that's just sort
Mhm.
of how I grew up knowing about artists, having opinions, and going to museums. When I was in college, most of my friend group was pretty similar in that sense. A lot of them were in the art school at University of Texas.
Mhm.
And as a social circle, we were art involved. One of those people, when he graduated, opened up basically a warehouse studio in Houston that existed for years. And there was a core group of us that were just sort of always there. And I was not an artist myself at the time, or I wasn't putting myself out as an artist.
Mhm.
Nobody was looking at any art I'm making.
Mhm.
But we'd have art shows, we'd have all sorts of productions, and like just being involved in terms of like moving art, hanging art, just being there when the art's made. That was a lifestyle for years. And then my friend went off to graduate school to get his master's of fine art. And when he finished with that, he opened up another studio, which I think it's in Memphis, Tennessee. It's called 5 and 1 Studios. And I think they've been going for close to 20 years now. And especially in the beginning years, I was pretty involved with all of that. And then law school and being a lawyer, and also, just frankly living in a different state,
Mhm.
interfered with all that.
Mhm.
And so my participation in art became more as a consumer or an observer.
Mhm.
I was living in Miami. I've been here in Florida for 20 years.
Mhm.
Art Basel started around the time that I was in law school. And I remember going to Art Basel, I think probably 2005 or 6, and just
Mhm.
having my mind blown. And then just going every year for like 15 something years.
Okay.
And then what ended up happening was a gallery owner that I know saw that I was enthused about Art Basel and he needed extra help running his booth at Art Basel back in, I think, 2018, hired me to do that. And a couple of years later, he saw one of my paintings and he was like, "Well, if you can make more paintings like that, I'll
Mm.
put you on the walls at Art Basel."
Okay.
And that's exactly what happened. I made more paintings that were on par with the one that he had seen, and or even better, actually.
Mhm.
He delivered. He did put me on the wall on Art Basel, and then he gave me an art residency at his studio in Georgia.
Mhm.
And you know, one thing led to another, and all of a sudden, like people are paying attention to my art, and they
Oh,
want my
wow.
art. And you know, the art thing is very old. 2018 is when I started comedy. So
Okay. Who are some I mean, is it okay to say you're a painter or is it
yeah,
kinda okay.
yeah, I'm flattered to say I'm a painter.
Are there any other, like, art painters that kinda influence
Yeah,
you
influence me.
or inspire you? Yeah, same thing.
the- okay, so there's like painters and artists that I love that aren't necessarily my influences. I just
Mhm.
love their stuff. There's stuff that I've done which other people see and they're like, "Oh, this reminds me of this artist or that artist."
Mhm.
And there are 3 painters, they're all super famous painters that come up over and over again. There's a few things I've done that people keep saying Van Gogh, a little, self-serving flattery there, but
Mhm.
like they say Van Gogh, and I know is specifically my painting looks like Starry Night in a sense. They're
Yeah.
seeing that.
I can see that, yeah.
It's a couple of the mosaic paintings that I've
Mhm.
done, and I think you have seen at least one of them. And I've done some stuff that people say looks like Klimt, probably for the same reason that they were saying it looked like Van Gogh, just like sort of that
Mhm.
pixelated pointillism looking thing. So
Yeah.
I guess I'm getting inspiration from them.
So I a while back, I was reading a biography on Van Gogh. It was a really big book, and so glad I was able to get through that. And he did or he created Starry Night around you mentioned like being in a mental institution. He did that while I think it was around the time he was in a mental
Mhm.
institute. This is right after he cut his ear
Mhm.
off, which was also something I was really interested, like who'd he give it to and stuff, because there was
There's a lot of legends about that, and a
yeah,
lot of misinformation.
there is, and like from what the book said, like because from what I always understood, he gave it to like a woman that he loved or
Mhm.
interested. From what I read, the book, it was actually to it was for his roommate that just left that they had some like conflicts with each other.
Yeah, he was apparently a terrible roommate,
Yeah,
which I think is on brand.
and yeah,
Painters are messy.
yeah, and it was actually intended for the roommate that left, but he gave it to a lady at a brothel that the roommate favored.
Yeah,
So he's
yeah,
just like, give it to him. He couldn't find him, but I was like, okay, now I know who the ear was for.
yeah. Well, once you cut off your ear and start giving it to anybody, I don't think there's accounting for what people are going to say about it. I think you lose control of the story when you start cutting body parts off, giving them away. But
But
yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence that the painters that my paintings seem to remind other people of are well-known mentally ill artists. I'm a pretty mentally stable person, but painting is definitely a release, and
yeah.
I find it to be very calming. And sometimes I look at my work and I'm just like, oh yeah, I was out of my mind. I was absolutely out of my mind when I did that.
Well, he got made fun of a lot from how he made his strokes.
Yeah.
That was like he would, just from what I understand, he would like really squint, but he would every stroke he would like lean back and squint. So do you have a certain like practice how you was picked on a lot for that?
I get
So-
something even worse.
Okay.
My friend Miguel Hurtado, who's a artist up at Northwood, where I had that last show. Of course, you've been to Northwood Art and Music
Hmm.
Warehouse yourself. He's one of the painters there. And when I was working on my pointillist series last summer, the colorful points on the black background, I was doing, I think I did 25 or 30 of those paintings in various sizes.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of muscle memory to it. There's a lot of just very specific focus on where exactly you're
Yeah.
going to put those. But he said that one evening I was sitting on the couch and I had the painting in my hand and I had the paintbrush and I was painting and I started to fall asleep and I'm just still going and I'm still going and I'm still painting and I'm sleeping. And he said, I didn't miss a spot. He said, I didn't mess up. I didn't screw up any of my brush strokes. I didn't smear anything. I didn't double dip anything.
Yeah.
He was just like, should I wake him up? Should I stop him? He's like, and eventually I think I woke up and it was just like, oh, okay, cool. Keep going, And I mean, that would probably happen at 2 o'clock in the morning. I was justifiably tired.
Is there anything that you do to kind of like prepare painting? Like, is there a certain time of the day that you kind of like feel like it's best for you to paint? Do you need to drink something, take something? Like, I'm just curious of what do you do to prepare for that?
I had a routine when I was at my residency. It was a pretty good setup where I had a huge studio, all the supplies, everything I could possibly need, all to myself. Most days I wouldn't see another human being. I was living there, so I would just get up, make some breakfast, drink some coffee, and I was there for 3 months doing this day in and day out. So I developed a routine. And I have not had that kind of routine on a regular basis since I've come back from Georgia.
Hmm.
I got linked up with Northwood Art and Music Warehouse, and for a long time I would just go there when I could and I'd paint and I'd make the most of my time while I was there. Last summer, in the months of say May, June, July, when I was preparing for the show, I was there a lot more. I would, stay there as much as possible and just paint for, a day at a time. And so it was a habit for the period, but
Hmm.
that's not the kind of routine that I extend out like all year.
Hmm.
It was even unsustainable for like a couple months. The productivity was great. I'm proud of, but that's not a routine for day-to-day living. That's,
Hmm.
preparing specifically for an art show. So the two most productive periods I've had a routine, a groove that I got into under normal circumstances, everyday life, so to speak, where I'm not sort of setting aside everything to dedicate to painting. I have to steal the time. I have to find it. And,
Hmm.
whether it's at night or the weekend, it happens. And it's usually a product of like ADHD and anxiety of like the moment. And then I find myself painting. I
Hmm.
have a bunch of canvases that are just barely started or they've been finished, but I'm not happy, so I know I'm gonna paint over it.
Mhm.
And there's literally a stack, probably like 25, anywhere from like 3 foot by 3 foot down to little ones, and they're just sort of sitting in a pile waiting. And at
Mm.
any given moment, I feel like I could pick one up and just start anew or continue on or do something, but I
Mhm.
might not see that coming. It may just be like late at night or first thing in the morning or whatever.
Mhm. So, how did stand up come about?
Oh gosh. The simplest version of this story. It sounds like such a cliche because it probably is, especially for the time.
Mhm.
I was really depressed.
Mhm.
I wasn't in a good place in my marriage and my household. I did get divorced a couple years later, and I'm not going to attribute the divorce to doing stand up comedy, but I probably started doing comedy about a year or two before I got divorced.
Okay.
And it probably contributed. It probably
Mm.
contributed because she saw my act. Yeah, anyway, no, she's a good fan. She's a good fan and a good supporter. But what happened was I was depressed
Mhm.
and I was being deliberately underemployed. I was just like driving Uber. I wasn't working lawyer jobs or doing anything productive. I was driving Uber and I was listening to podcasts a lot. I was listening to Mark Maron podcast and I was listening to Joe Rogan podcast.
Mhm.
And whenever they were interviewing comics and the comics were talking about how they started comedy and how they feel about themselves in the comedy community and like the relationships they have with other comics, it was relatable to me on a level that I've never experienced before.
Mhm.
I never thought that about like a celebrity actor or an athlete or even like a famous painter or anything
Mhm.
like that. I've never
Mhm.
looked at anybody's sort of lifestyle and thought, oh no, they're just describing me. This is like how I relate with people. This is how I'm comfortable with people. This makes sense. These people sound like the friends that I haven't met yet.
Yeah, yeah.
And I have a dear friend who is a professional comic up in Chicago. She'd been running an open mic for like a decade. And she told me that's Leah Berman, and she runs Logan on Monday nights in Chicago. She's a great comic in the Bad Moms of Comedy Tour.
Mhm.
I'll shout her out because she got my start. She said to me,
Okay.
I've known her since birth. Her mom and my mom are best friends. And so,
Mhm.
like, we've known each other since diapers.
Mhm.
And she knew what I was dealing with. And she heard what I was saying about comedy. And she's like, well, if you ever want to try an open mic, just if you're ever up in Chicago, I'll put you on my open mic,
Okay.
like any spot you want. I realize now that's actually kind of a big deal because her open mic has like 50 people show up.
Oh,
They only get
wow.
3 minutes. It's business. Like,
Yeah.
I just like show up, do 5 minutes, duh, 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 duh. And she's just like, so I did. I went in February 2018. I went to her open mic in Chicago and she said to me, great, now go do that 500 more times. I was like, yes, ma'am. And then came home and just went on an open mic spree for years.
Mhm.
And that's how it started. Here we
Mhm.
are.
You mentioned about, like, being depressed and that got you into doing stand-up. So, I'm sure that you get stressed out sometimes then. So, what do you do to kind of relieve yourself of that stress?
Painting. I mean,
Uh-huh.
in all seriousness, painting relieves stress for me.
Mhm.
I had an insight recently that's like, painting makes me happy, but I paint when I am unhappy.
Mhm.
And it's not even that I necessarily realize that I'm unhappy and like, oh, I better go paint a painting.
Mhm.
It's just that like I finish doing a painting or I'm working on a painting and then I'm like, oh, I realize I feel better now.
Mhm.
So there's that. I don't think that I do comedy to relieve stress.
Mhm.
I think that comedy, if you take it the way I take it seriously, for me, comedy is stressful. If I have a show coming that I care about, or even an open mic where I want to do new material or try something new, I feel like all day long I'm getting wound up like a tire swing on a rope that's just getting twisted and twisted and twisted until it can't
Mhm.
twist anymore. And then you get on stage and that gets released.
Yeah.
And then it just spins out of control for a while and you're done with the comedy. And then it just stops moving. And you get that release. But I actually think that the preparation for the comedy itself is
Mm-hmm.
what causes that tension to be released.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not some other stress that I'm trying to fix.
So, do you have any special routines, kind of rituals that you follow throughout your day or your week?
Hmm. I drink a lot of coffee in the mornings.
Mm-hmm.
Probably smoke too many cigarettes some of the time. Try not to. That's a morning routine. I've started a new job recently where I work from home and I just, I'm on my computer. So that's become part of it where I have to put in usually about 4 hours in the morning, take a little break, and then, 4 more hours, or I'll break it up into smaller and smaller chunks, but get that done throughout the day. Day to day routine. I'm a little bit ADHD and I'm surrounded by other ADHD people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to have a routine other than sort of general patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout the week, though, for sure, I typically go to an open mic on Monday nights and on Thursday nights. If I can get a actual showcase show in on for the weekend, I'll try to be on something.
What mics on Thursdays?
Cargo Coffee, spelled
Okay.
Qargo, on Clematis in West Palm Beach. It's run by Delta the Great and John Sorrell.
Okay.
It's a pretty decent little production. They have a nice little stage. The room always fills up. The staff at the bar or the coffee shop are nice. The comics that are showing up are getting better and better. So
I
it's fun.
accidentally stumbled onto that mic. I was just walking down
Oh
Clematis,
yeah,
going back to my car, and then I saw that, and I saw open mic sign. I was like, okay, like
yeah.
it's
Okay,
like I'm like haven't done a mic in a while, so I was like, okay, let me go and see if I can get a clip out of it.
it's a consistently good one. They They get a pretty high value production. The way the stage is set up, they have a sound guy running sound.
Okay.
They keep a clock so you can actually see exactly how much time you
Oh,
got.
okay.
And I think that they're giving most comics 7 minutes now.
Wow. So, do you have any practices that help motivate you that you can recommend for our listeners or viewers?
I mean, I think anybody can paint. Literally, all you have to do is buy the supplies and then put paint onto a canvas, and it is quite therapeutic. So, if that's a practice or you can turn it into a practice, I would definitely say that. There's zero barriers to entry on that. Don't recommend stand-up comedy. In the context of comedy, I don't always do this, but for like a more serious show, just like in the minute or two before you're supposed to go on, just a little bit of just shut your eyes and a little bit of a breathing exercise and just
Hmm.
calm your head and then just wait for your name. And then when they say your name, then start walking to the stage. Depending on the circumstances where the show is, whether you're coming out of a green room or just walking up out of the audience, it's not as easy to do. But I try to do that. But no, I mean, I'm not as well grounded and stable
Hmm.
as one ought to be. And so I don't have those kinds of rituals.
So, are you working on anything that our viewers should watch out for?
Well, I got some ideas in the making I shouldn't talk about so much out loud.
Hmm.
I will say that me and Nico Bowling will be having a comedy show at a new restaurant in not West Palm Beach, in Lake Worth Beach, called Bizarre Avenue Cafe.
Okay.
The first show date TBD. That was
Hmm.
actually supposed to start back in October, but alas, I got hit by a car, so
Hmm.
that got put on the back burner for a while. Bizarre Avenue Cafe in Lake Worth Beach is definitely worth checking out. They have
Okay.
some of my paintings on the wall there too, so I'm biased and big fan.
Okay. All right. I look forward to
Yep.
that showcase.
Yeah, yeah. That'll be fun. Yeah, we'll get you on that. So Bizarre Avenue Cafe, I'm doing a show at Abby's Red Light at Monroe's in March. This is kind of corny, but it's going to be me, Jess Lasso, Jess Smith, and Jesse Herschel. Oh gosh, what I did Jacobson? I think is his
Okay.
last name, Hirsch Jacobson. Yeah, but all four of us are named Jesse.
Did you just do that like as a?
It was our idea.
Oh, okay. All right. That's cool. I
Yeah.
like that. The
In the
Jesse
meantime,
Show.
Brett from Jesse's Extreme Sports Bar won't put us up as a lineup because he doesn't think having 4 people named Jesse performing at a place called Jesse's is a good enough explanation for a lineup. Yeah, Brett, you heard it here first.
No, I look forward to that show. I'll definitely
Yeah, it'll
go.
be fun. It'll be fun. I have another art show at Northwood Art and Music Warehouse. I believe it'll be at the end of March.
Okay.
So I need to finish some stuff that's in the works. I have not painted anything since my accident in September.
Mm,
I did paint after my last show in July, but that accident messed up my right arm pretty bad.
Oh,
And
wow.
I'm barely back to being able to do that kind of arm motion that I need.
Mhm.
So anyway, March, at the end of March, I have a painting
Okay.
exhibition.
So, Jesse Cohen, do you have any final thoughts you want to leave with our viewers?
Yeah, and I hope we can have some peace in Palestine. Good
Okay.
love to everybody.
Awesome. Well, Jesse, thank you so much for joining me on the Someday with Jay Barsky, and best of luck on everything.
Thanks, Barsky.
Thanks for listening to our episode with Jesse Cohen. Follow him on all his socials, which you may find in the episode notes. I hope you enjoyed our episode. Please rate and comment on the podcast to help make it grow. If you wish to follow me, all my socials are at I am Jay Barsky. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you soon.